In this video, we are going to examine the system level of detail for Autodesk Inventor. Here inside of the working file System Level of Detail IAM, I have a completed design inside of here, and it's currently in the master level of detail representation, which is actually one of the system defined ones. If I go over to the representations on the left-hand side of the screen, expand level of detail master, you'll see the current available level of detail representations we have for this design. These 4 level of detail representations are known as system level of details. They essentially cannot be changed or modified. They can only be activated and consumed. The master level of detail representation that we're currently on essentially states that everything that we have in this assembly is currently fully loaded. Nothing has been suppressed or disabled whatsoever. Everything is fully inside of memory of our workstation. Now, before we start modifying levels of detail to change to these different ones, you actually have to be in the fully loaded version of your assembly. I'm currently in the Express mode for this particular design. So I'm going to go to the Assemble tab at the very end where it says the Express panel there. I'm going to load the full assembly. Levels of detail are one thing you cannot change or modify when you are working in the Express mode. So now that we have our fully loaded assembly, if I go back over to Representations and expand Level of Detail again, let's talk about these other 3 system-defined levels of detail. The second one in this list is All Components Suppressed. What this essentially means is all of our subassemblies and their parts are all suppressed and unloaded from memory. If I double-click on this to activate that level of detail, it's going to basically reduce the memory of our machine. If you look in the lower right down here, we can see we now have a 0 and a 1 for how many documents are currently loaded. If I look at my model browser, every single component at this level of the design is currently suppressed and unloaded from memory. I also have no ability to look at the structure of the assembly either. So what does this really do for us? Well, if you have all components suppressed of a very large design, 10,000 components, like I had here, you can methodically go through and unsuppress certain ones that you would like to work on without having to load every single item in the design. So here I just right-clicked and unsuppressed 3 subassemblies. If you look at my counter in the lower right area of the screen, you can see it's loaded up a lot more parts, but it's not anywhere near the 10,000 that I had previously. If I double-click on All Parts Suppressed, this scenario is very similar to the All Components Suppressed, with the exception of I now can expand my assemblies that I have in here as subassemblies, and I can examine the structure, as well as constraints that might exist between the different assemblies. The last one is All Content Center Suppressed. If I double-click on this one, it's essentially going to reload everything except items that I would have placed from the Content Center. As this is loading, let's talk about that a little bit. When you load something from Content Center, essentially it goes into a standard directory on your computer as designated by your project file and your application options. If you place an item from Content Center but you choose the custom option, this does not factor into the All Content Center Suppressed, because only items that show up in those files designated by your project file and application options will be turned off with this level of detail. If I scroll down in my browser, I can see that there are clearly some items that may have been created from Content Center, such as the ISO 4762M16. However, they are placed in as custom items and therefore are not considered standard content. Just to get a little bit better idea of that particular scenario, if I go to place something from Content Center, if I choose an item, such as this particular bolt right here, and go to bring it in, the dialog box that pops up will ask me if I would like to place this as standard or as custom. If I choose as custom, the file will be placed in my local workspace with a file name that I would like to have for it. If I choose as standard, it will use the recipe from the Inventor Content Center and place it in a specified directory that will be considered a standard component. If I choose OK to that, The icon inside of Inventor's browser window also looks different so you can tell what will be suppressed and what will not. If I scroll down, I cancel that. Let me go ahead and drop that in again. Just place that on screen anywhere. It's very tiny, so you can't really see it there. But in my model browser, you can see the icon looks like a part sitting on top of a library book. That's a visual indication that that is a standard Content Center item compared to a traditional looking IPT file. Now, one last thing to mention about system levels of detail is when you activate them, any of the 4 that were in there, they will actually go down through and activate the same level of detail in the subassemblies. So if I expand one of my subassemblies here in my model browser, you will see the level of detail of the subassemblies is also set to all Content Center suppressed. The same thing happens for all parts suppressed, all components, or even the master level of detail.